Non-Monogamy Help is a podcast where your questions about open, non-monogamous or polyamorous relationships are answered. Our host, Lola Phoenix, will consult a licensed therapist with over a decade of experience to address your problems. Names and locations have been changed or censored to keep your questions anonymous. You're listening to Non-Monogamy Help, the podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 25 of Non-Monogamy Help. I'm Lola Phoenix. If you would like to send in your letter, you can email nonmonogamyhelp@gmail.com, and your letter will either be in the podcast or the column anonymously. You're more than welcome to decide which you would like it to be in. You can read the columns and listen to the podcast at nonmonogamyhelp.com. Subscribe to our newsletter at go.nonmonogamyhelp.com/email. I am not using Tiny Letter anymore, but if you have subscribed to emails using Tiny Letter, then your email will be carried over, so you don't have to resubscribe. And the emails should look much better than they have in the past and be scheduled, so I don't have to worry about them every week, so that's a good thing. You can also follow us at Non-Monogamy Help on Twitter, and if you want to be amazing, you can become a patron by going to patreon.com/Lola Phoenix. Even just $1 a month is super helpful, helps me run the podcast, pay for the costs and everything, and it's just a nice general vote that you support what I am trying to do. If you donate $5 or more a month, then your name will be read at the end of the podcast, if you so choose, but you don't have to if you don't want to. So, before I get to the letter, I'm going to do our discussion topic. If this is the first podcast you've listened to, our discussion topic is just basically something that you can take to your partners, friends, whomever, to help get to know them a little better. Just another thing that you can discuss if you'd like. And I usually give you a discussion topic and then answer it myself very, very briefly before you get to the letter so that you have a context for it. This week's discussion topic is, if you had a memoir, what would the title of it be? And I really like this question because it's something that I've thought about, maybe because I'm a bit of a writer, so I've always kind of thought of it. I say a bit of a writer, geez, give myself more confidence. Anyway, so back when I was in high school, for my senior project, I had to do something big, so I wrote a play, and it was semi-autobiographical, and it was basically about the big thing that was going on in my life, which was that the president at the time was really pushing for an amendment in the Constitution to solidify that marriage was between a man and a woman, and that was really upsetting for me because my mom's gay. I also later came out as bisexual later on, but kind of wasn't really cognizant of that at the time. But it was really upsetting because my mom couldn't marry her partner, if she died, then I'd have to go live with my dad, which I didn't want to do. I didn't have access to health insurance benefits, so the medicine that I take, which is really, really expensive, I couldn't take, or there were problems getting it because my mom didn't have a job at some points, and because my parents were married, I couldn't have access to her partner's health insurance, so I kind of made the play around that, except the only difference was that in the play my mom died to sort of bring that kind of bring the message home, more or less. But everything else was pretty much true. And as part of this production, I had to put it on, I had to cast people and direct it, and I had to get my peers to watch the play and give their own reviews. Now, granted, these people didn't volunteer to see the play, but I guess in that way you do get really honest reviews. And so I got a couple of interesting comments, a couple about, political agenda, blah, blah, blah. One comment said that medicine doesn't cost that much, when, yes, my medicine did cost that much. And one comment that I got that I very much remember was somebody said, "Nobody has this many problems." And that really stuck with me for a very long time, and it's still stuck with me now, and just kind of encapsulates the kind of school I went to, which was a very, very rich school with a lot of rich kids going to it. So I think if I did have a memoir, I think that would be the title, "Nobody Has This Many Problems," just because I was so aghast by it. I mean, I know I said it was semi-autobiographical, but everything else in the play, other than my mother dying, was completely accurate, and I didn't even put all of the problems that I've ever had in my life in that play. I didn't really go into why I didn't want to go back to my dad's house, so yeah, it's always stuck with me. So I think that would be the title of my memoir, "Nobody Has This Many Problems." So yeah, I don't know, I think this is kind of a fun question, so ask your parents, lovers, whomever you'd like. Just to recap another time, the discussion topic is, if you had a memoir, what would the title of it be? Now let's get to this week's letter. My wife cheated on me a few months ago. It was an emotional friendship which she mistook one night that it could be something more. She immediately ended all ties with the friend. We worked through the issue and our relationship grew stronger. In order to prevent this from happening again, I have now given her permission to sleep with other people, as long as it's purely physical and I am aware of the situation. She has agreed only to be physical experiences and always to be honest. We try to plan these experiences together and I get the worst anxiety. I know this is probably normal with most people. Should I push through the anxiety? Do I owe it to her to at least try this to see how I will feel after? I really want to be able to give this to her. She's given me every inclination that this will only be physical experiences, so why am I so worried? So, this is like the biggest thing that I think a lot of people do when they go to open their relationship. I don't think that cheating is necessarily the best start to an open relationship. It is like a way that a lot of people end up in open relationships. So, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the end of all, a kind of negative aspect of it. But I do think that when cheating happens, the person who cheated really needs to really understand why it is they did what they did and be willing to rebuild that trust. Like, that needs to be kind of a big thing, because essentially what's happened is that all of the trust that you've built in your relationship, and I don't know how long you've been with your wife, but all the trust that you've built has now kind of been broken, and you can't really build a house on a broken foundation. And opening a relationship is an extreme stressor into the relationship, just like having a child is, just like moving to a new country is. It is a big change, and if you try to make that change on top of a foundation that is cracked, it's going to be very, very difficult. So I think that the primary thing which is probably causing you anxiety isn't just opening your relationship, but it's also that your wife has cheated, and it doesn't sound like she's unapologetic about it. You said you worked through the issue and your relationship has grown stronger, but you also need to remember that even as your relationship has grown stronger, it's going to take a while for you to have the same level of trust again. And so it is okay for you to be anxious, and I think you would be anxious even if you hadn't opened up your relationship. The second thing that really worries me here is that you're opening your relationship to prevent her from cheating on you again. People can still cheat in open or polyamorous or non-monogamous relationships. It depends how you define cheating. Like, I accept the fact that people define cheating in their own way, and I encourage people to figure out what is cheating to them as early as they can in a relationship, because I do sometimes think that when people have different definitions of what cheating is, they end up in situations where one person has cheated according to the other person, but the other person doesn't think they've cheated. In my definition of cheating is when a partner has hidden or lied to me about something. And that can be intentional lying or lying through omission. So it doesn't even have to be sex. And it sounds like in this situation you said it was an emotional friendship. It can be something like that. It's just anything that a partner is lying to me about and hiding from me is cheating to me. You can't prevent that from happening necessarily by opening the relationship completely. And I think that suckering yourself into that false sense of security is a really dangerous thing, especially because what some people end up doing when they first open their relationships is that they're so not used to this being a thing that sometimes they accidentally cheat on their partner. So they'll open the relationship, they'll go out and they know they have permission, but they are afraid almost to have a discussion with their partner after they've been out with somebody else. And so it's easier sometimes for them to hide it and not talk about it, even though that is technically cheating. So that can still happen. She can be still worried, even if you've made this arrangement. She can still be worried and not tell you something, and I think there needs to be some understanding of that. But yeah, you shouldn't assume that you can't be cheated on, and that's not to make you even more scared or to increase your anxiety, but it's just to be realistic about the situation. The second thing, or I guess the third thing, is that this rule, and a lot of people do this, they make these rules where, okay, it's just going to be physical, we're not going to fall in love with somebody else. I think that there are very, very few people on this planet even, who are self-aware enough to be able to say, I won't fall in love with somebody. And even then, I think it's not that they can control who they fall in love with. I think it's that they know themselves well enough that when they start having those kind of feelings, they're able to pull back. Most people, I don't think, are really that capable of that. And it's not to say anything bad about your wife or anything bad about anybody else, but you really can't control who you start to develop romantic feelings for. Most of us can't. If you could control that, I probably wouldn't get so many letters. You just can't control that. So creating this rule where you won't have feelings isn't really a good rule. And it also is there to try and prevent something from happening that you can't prevent from happening. What you need to think about is, especially since if she had cheated because she was sexually curious and had a one-night stand with somebody, then maybe it would be different. But she actually cheated by having this emotional friendship and this connection with somebody. So it's unrealistic for you or for her to really expect that she won't have that connection again with somebody. It's unrealistic for anyone who's monogamous to expect that somebody, that their partner won't, can't fall in love with somebody else. You can. It's not about preventing those feelings. It's about figuring out what you're going to do when those feelings occur. And you and her both would need to have a look at what polyamory is and what you really want out of the situation, because it makes me wonder if when she cheated on you, she had this emotional friendship, and it doesn't seem like that was just about having different sexual experiences. It seemed like that was about a relationship. Does she actually want other relationships, or is she just sort of agreeing to this kind of thing where she can have sex with other people because that's what you're giving her, but, she can't control if she has emotions towards somebody else. And do you really want to be in a situation where she does have emotions for somebody else? Is that really a threat to you? Are you interested in her actually dating other people? What does that look like for your relationship? So it's normal that you're having a lot of anxiety, but I do think that you haven't really spelled out what this means. You're kind of allowing, giving her permission to sleep with other people, but you haven't really figured out if this is what she wants fully or if this is what she's missing. And that's naturally, you're having anxiety for, because of that, because you haven't really established anything. You don't really know how this is going to change your relationship. I don't know. It doesn't seem like in this letter that you've really sat down and thought, okay, if she is sleeping with other people, is there like a designated date night where she can go out with people? How will this affect the plans that you might have for each other in the future? I think that you could proceed, because I do think that this anxiety you feel is totally, totally normal. Like, I think people don't talk about it enough. Like, the first night when you have like a live-in partner or somebody that you've been with for a while, the first night when they go out with somebody else sucks. It really sucks. It just feels terrible. It took me a long time to actually be able to sleep through the night. And that wasn't even my partner, like, going out and staying the night at other people's houses. That was just my partner going out to a party that would last all night. It's just hard because, your brain goes on a sort of a magical mystery tour of the terriblest things that could happen, or at least my brain does. So that's quite normal, and it does get better. But the thing of it is that, I can say to you, yeah, it's going to get better. Keep going with it. You just have to go through anxiety sometimes, live through it, come out the other end, and see that you're fine and your partner's still there, and it does get better over a period of time. But given what you've told me about the way that she cheated first off, it makes me wonder if this is actually what she wants. Because maybe she just wants sexual experiences, but she is going to end up having emotional friendships and emotional connections with the people that she sleeps with. And you've only made a rule that it shouldn't happen, but you haven't really talked about what's going to happen if it does happen. I mean, what is going to happen? At what point? It's very hard to say when you've fallen in love with somebody. It's very hard to say when you have feelings for somebody. Sometimes that's very nebulous. And so at what point is she supposed to come to you and say, I think I'm falling for this person? You could go the extra mile like some people do and put extra rules on it and say you can only sleep with one person 3 times. I don't think that's really, really helpful, because you just can't prevent somebody from having feelings for somebody else. You just can't prevent that. And it's unrealistic to make a rule that they can't do that, because they can't help it. So what you need to think about is what's going to happen if that happens. Does she actually want other relationships with other people? And if she does, I don't think that necessarily means that your relationship has to end. I think that you just need to think about if there's something in it for you. What does polyamory offer you? Don't just do something because your partner's doing it and you want to make sure that they are happy. You need to also think about your happiness. So you might get something out of polyamory. And even if you're not necessarily interested in being polyamorous yourself, maybe you like to have your alone time, maybe there are hobbies you want to take up that'll take up time. There's all kinds of reasons why a person who might be more monogamously inclined would be okay with their partner not only sleeping with other people, but also having relationships with other people. And it's just about thinking about how that will impact your life in a physical way. Because I think, love is infinite and yada, 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 but time is not. And I think that people need to think about how their time will be impacted. And regardless of the amount of love your partner has for you, when you agree to a situation that is non-monogamous or polyamorous or open, you are basically agreeing to your partner spending less time with you than they would otherwise. And I don't think that's exclusive to non-monogamy. I think that if you are dating someone who is, in some type of military service, or you're dating someone who is a doctor, or you're dating someone who's a lawyer, someone who has an intense career which pulls them away for long periods of time, or they have to be at their job for 18 hours, that you're also, when you're dating them or marrying them or in a long-term relationship with them, you are agreeing to a relationship where that person does not have the same amount of time for you as somebody who would otherwise be in a different position. So, I don't think it's necessarily a terrible thing. In my personal experience, even if I don't have other partners, I enjoy being alone. I enjoy having that time to myself. I enjoy going out with my friends. I enjoy doing things that aren't necessarily dating other people. So there's lots of reasons why it would be appealing to you, but you need to think about that. And I think right now you're just trying to solve the cheating by opening the relationship and allowing her to sleep with other people. And as I said, if she had cheated in a way that was kind of like being interested in a sexual experience and going after it, then maybe I would see that this might be a solution to that. But the fact that it was kind of more of an emotional connection, I just think that this rule that you have where it's only going to be physical is just doomed to failure. And maybe there's a part of your subconscious that knows that, and that's a big reason why you're freaking out. To summarize, first things first, I think that if cheating happens and you want to open a relationship, the person definitely needs to be give you a little bit of patience with the amount of anxiety that you're going to have, because that trust has to be rebuilt. And sometimes trust has to be rebuilt in an actual active scenario, because it's easy just to sit down and talk about this stuff. It's easy just to sit down and say, oh yes, I know you'll never leave me, da 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 da. But until it's actually put into the test, you're going to feel anxious. And then sometimes it takes it being put to the test and then you coming out the other side and seeing that she hasn't left for you to actually calm down a bit. So theory is different than application, basically. Second thing is that this rule that you have where it's only physical is a bit doomed to failure. It's not really going to work, because someone can't prevent their emotions to this extent. So you need to rethink that rule and rethink the reasons why you're opening the relationship, and also, what you plan to do if feelings happen and how that might change your relationship. You and your partner need to really think about what it is that she wants out of a relationship. Does she want multiple relationships? Is it really just sexual experiences she wants? And just be really candidly honest with each other. And then last but not least, this anxiety, if you get all that worked out, if you have a good talk about it and she figures out that she isn't kind of being not honest with herself and just kind of going with what you're offering, but maybe she actually does want relationships, and maybe you figure out you're okay with that. Whatever ends up happening, if you do decide to try this anxiety that you have is totally, totally, totally normal. It's just totally normal. It's okay to be terrified the first night, or even the second night, or even the fifth night that your partner is spending it with someone else, and just to be fraught with anxiety. I have been fraught with anxiety before. So I'm much better now. I can sleep through the night now, which is good. And I am way, way less anxious about it. I'm so much more chill than I was before. So just in my personal experience, this complete and utter anxiety is totally normal. And unfortunately, you do kind of just have to go through it and see that your partner hasn't left you. That's just sometimes the way anxiety is. The more you try to avoid it by making rules or by trying to... I've tried to distract myself. That's kind of advice everyone gives. Just spend time with a friend, take a bath, Yeah, I did, but I still felt shit. It's sometimes unavoidable. So, it's okay that you feel that. So sorry about the siren noise. It's okay that you feel that. Don't beat yourself up for feeling that way, because you can't really cope with your anxiety if you're too busy beating yourself up for having it. and just kind of accept that it's going to be shit and don't let that control your partner or prevent your partner from not doing things. Like I said, the more you put off going through that anxiety, it doesn't change the amount. Like in my personal experience, if I give anxiety an inch, it takes a mile. If I allow my anxiety to start to control my behaviors, I'll think, oh no, I'll just avoid this for now. And then it adds another thing that I have to avoid, and another thing I have to avoid, and then another, and then another. And it just builds until I'm just sitting in a corner crying, and everything is going to attack me. So you just don't let it get to a point of controlling you. You just gotta go through it, unfortunately. So yeah, I hope that helps, and good luck. Thank you for listening to episode 25 of Non-Monogamy Help. If you would like to send in a question, please send it to nonmonogamyhelp@gmail.com, and it'll either be in the podcast or the column anonymously. Just one last pitch for helping out with the podcast. If you would like to help out and support the podcast, please become a patron at patreon.com/LolaPhoenix. If you donate $5 or more, then your name gets read at the end of the podcast. And this week's patrons currently are Laura Boylan, Chris Albury-Jones, Duke, and James Wartell. Thank you to those folks who've donated $5 or more. If you become a patron, even if you just do $1 a month or more, then you will actually be able to see the columns and the podcasts a whole 4 days before they go out to the public. So that's exciting. You should do that. Also, another thing that you can do, if you can't become a patron now or can't do any tipping or anything else, one thing I'd really like folks to do if they can is rate and review the podcast on iTunes. That's also really helpful. The more ratings that it gets, even if you don't want to write a physical review, you can just do a rating. It gets higher in the rankings for stuff. It shows up more often. So please just spend 5 minutes logging into Apple. Give us a rate and a review. Super helpful. Awesome. Thanks so much for listening. The next column will be out next week. The next column and episode 26 will be out the week after next in a fortnight. Should just say fortnight. So yeah, thank you for listening. Bye. You've been listening to Non-Monogamy Help. Our podcast music has been provided by Chris Albury-Jones at albury-jones.com, and the art was made by Dom Jung at domduong.com. Thank you for listening.